Information is power. Data is the new oil. It's the thing that's going to power all the industries. We're building a system that makes humanity able to smartly manage resources, a bit like the eye system with the visual cortex helps humans make smart decisions.
It's awe-inspiring, and it's important for people to understand what's coming.
So I think of it as awareness to action. That's the phase change that we're going from. And action requires detailed tools and information that's timely and relevant to your day-to-day life. And just like the mainframe computer to desktop revolution, it's going to change the whole dynamics of what's possible in space. And this is just the beginning.
Everybody, Peter here. Welcome to Moonshots. I'm here with a dear friend. May I say an old dear friend? We've been friends for over a couple of decades. Dr. Will Marshall. Will, good to see you, buddy.
Great to be on.
Yeah, no. So listen, you got a massive moonshot. And it really, when I think of you, I think about raster scanning the planet. It's about being able to know anything I want, anytime I want, anywhere I want, and really understanding the vibrancy, the problems, the opportunities globally. So let's begin with a quick overview of what is Planet Labs. And then I want to get into what is your 10, 20, 30-year vision for Planet Labs, because it's audacious and it truly is a moonshot.
Yeah, well, certainly. Look, Planet, in short, is a company. We have 200 satellites that image the entire landmass of the Earth every day. So it's a bit like if you go into Google and click on the satellite imagery layer, except that image is typically a few years old. We've got today, and yesterday, and the day before, and the day before, and the day before, basically 2,500 images now on average for every point of the landmass of the Earth, documenting immense change going on and powering AI tools to sit on top that enable us to take smarter care of the planet, resources upon it. But in many ways, we started as a space company. Now we're a data company, and that's the cool thing that's going on now. Space companies, it's less about the rockets and the satellites, and more about the data and how it can totally transform the Earth economy. And that's the sort of exciting phase we're in.
And I guess, as a public company now, it's the company's name is Planet. It used to be Planet Labs back in the early days, so I'll refer to it as Planet. And it's amazing. We're going to talk about the stories of how you went from literally a phone satellite to now 200 satellites. I think the largest private imaging collection of satellites. Maybe the NRO has more. I don't know. Maybe they use yours. Who knows? You got more than the NRO and more than the governments. Yeah, amazing. That's awesome. And the incredible journey. I mean, buying satellites from Google, getting Eric Schmidt and Larry Page and Sergey Brin and the entire group there, and Steve Jurvetson, one of the most incredible venture capitalists in the field, to back you as a 20-something-year-old. So I want to tell all that story. And it really, the ups, the downs, and the audacity of the moonshot you not only planned, but built. But I want to go someplace else first, because I've heard you describe this, and it's awe-inspiring, and it's important for people to understand what's coming. What is, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what's your vision of what Planet is doing and what's possible for humanity with the tech that you're building?
Well, look, it's a big question, but I really think that we have the tools at our disposal now to manage the planet in a very different way. We've got a lot of challenges, the climate change, and we can talk about biodiversity loss and all these things. But more broadly, we're on a spaceship hurtling around the sun, and we were taking data of it once a month, once a year. And how the heck are you managing that? It's a bit like, I think we were having a conversation with our grandchildren, then they'll say, hey, how did you manage the planet before you measured it regularly? Of course, the answer was not very well, and you obviously can't be a smart actor without data. I mean, as a space geek, I'll tell you a little space story. That when you put satellites into space, you obviously try to measure them faster than the timescale they change. Like if they're spinning around once a minute, you better measure that spin faster than once a minute. Like if you take a data point once a minute, you ain't going to stop the spin, right? You need to measure it faster. We are all on a spaceship, 8 billion astronauts hurtling around the sun, and we have an impact on that planet on days and weeks timescale of human activity. How do we manage that if we're not taking information, if we're not taking data points on that sort of timescale? So it stands to reason that you can't help the planet without that sort of data. As they like to say, you can't manage what you don't measure. So the vision in many ways is to give everyone the tools that enables us to make smart day-to-day decisions based on the physical understanding of what's going on the planet. I actually did a TED talk which extended it just beyond just the imagery of the Earth. It's the AI on top that then enables you to sort of have a queryable Earth. This is in 2018. And, in modern parlance, it'll be like Planet GPT. What is it that you should just be like, you can text search the internet and text now in human readable form, if you like, what's going on, and it gives you human readable answers. You should be able to do that for the Earth. How many trees are there being cut down in the Amazon? Where are those trees? What's the plot versus time? What's happening in my neighborhood? Who's doing what? Why? How are the parks doing? How do they need help? What do we need to do to clear up the pollution? Where's the pollution come from? All these challenges. Humans should be able to have that at their fingertips, and without having to have a PhD in space satellite imagery processing in order to get that, right? Just like we are doing again. So, AI companies have figured out how to turn the text of the internet first into a searchable place, that was Google, and now into this human readable way of interacting with
I love Planet GPT. It's a fantastic term. You should put that out there more. So I love the idea that at any time you can query what's going on the surface of the Earth and get an answer, and do it at a variety of spectral information and resolutions. So you have 200 satellites today, roughly. Yep. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What do if you're setting you're a moonshot entrepreneur, a decade from now or 2 decades from now, what do you imagine to create Planet GPT, where you've got information at a regular basis at high resolution? Where do you want to get to? What's your vision?
Well, on the data side, I think and the satellite piece, we're going to get more and more accurate data. So higher resolution, smaller pixel size.
Yeah. What's the resolution today?
Well, our daily scan is at 3 meter resolution. Our highest resolution imagery is at 50 centimeters. So we have a fleet of 20 satellites that can zoom in anywhere. And actually, it's kind of fun to think of it like how the human eye works, which is you have peripheral vision in much of your visual field. You only have high resolution in a tiny bit in the center. And actually, it's black and white beyond a certain point in your peripheral. But you're very good at change detection. And if there's something changes, your visual cortex goes, hey, guys, get that high res over here. And then you turn your eyes to your head, right? So we have the scan, which looks at the whole peripheral at 3 meter resolution, the whole planet. And then we have the high res that can zoom in on any particular piece that changes. So we call that system fovea, a bit like inspired by the eye. And the visual cortex is, of course, the AI that looks at the scan, finds the changes, finds what's interesting in the changes, blocks out everything else, and then coordinates what we should do as a result of that, including taking higher resolution imagery, but also making decisions day to day, right? Oh, that's a threat. This is just a cloud, no big deal. And so think of it that way. I think we're building a system that makes humanity able to smartly manage resources, a bit like the eye system with the visual cortex helps humans make smart decisions.
Do you remember calling me during COVID one night, really excited? I think I just had a power outage in the home, and you're on the phone giving me your vision of where, I guess now calling it Planet GPT, where it was going. And I was it was the most compelling vision I've heard about both giving our children the tools to manage the planet, but it's also a multi-trillion-dollar business opportunity. Can you dive in a little bit more? So do you think we'll have thousands of satellites? Do you think we'll have higher resolution?
Yeah, I think it will get more and more real time and higher resolution. So maybe we'll definitely get sub-meter daily scan, but I think we'll get more like hourly, maybe less. We'll also have other spectral bands. So we talk about going up in spatial resolution, temporal resolution, so how frequently, and spectral resolution, how many spectral bands, and that's less useful for the human eye, but it's an absolute field day for the algorithms because they can use different colors to distinguish between things. I mean, even down to, we're just about to launch some hyperspectral satellites that have 400 spectral bands that enable us, literally, you can tell not just that it's a green car, it's a green car that comes from this factory over here because that's the only factory that produces that shade of green, You can also look at what the oil reserves are of a country by virtue of the thermal heating of the oil tanks. Because you certainly the levels of the tanks. We can even do that today. One of the most wicked problems of the Earth is where's all the life? What different forms are where? We can actually tell species type of the trees or the grasses or the corals underneath the sea down to a certain depth and so on, all automatically. And so this is a field day, as I said, for AI, because it can pull out all of these things, right, and help us understand again the planet.
So it's we're both Trekkies, and so when the Starship Enterprise, sort of goes into orbit around the planet, and Captain Kirk, tells Spock to scan the planet, and he says, "We got these many life forms here." That's basically what you're enabling.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Now, talk about the idea of what industries and businesses this enables. So can I just paint the picture 1 second? So thousands of satellites, yes?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Thousands of satellites with each satellite has how many sensors on it?
Yeah, a few. It doesn't need to be many. It's mainly through one telescope, but different spectral regions. Yeah.
And all of this is being fed into a data layer that's is constantly being analyzed by AI.
Yep.
Right. So this is about early detection of disasters. It's about early detection of opportunities. It's about discovery. It's science. It's definitely industry. It's hedge funds, managing hedge funds.
It's everything.
Go give me an understanding of how big this opportunity is and how does it change the way we do business today? Because it's massive.
Well, information is power. The Economist said data is the new oil. It's the thing that's going to power all the industries. By the way, a little fun fact, if you look at all the tech giants and what they're doing with AI, they're all open sourcing the AI code. They're all open sourcing exactly zero of the data because the asset that they have that's unique is always the data, not the algorithms, or less the algorithms than the data. And that's why so when you think of AI, where to invest in an AI company, who's got the interesting data? Because that's going to be where you feel. So data is the new oil. It powers all the industries. Hopefully it's not dirty like oil, but it is analogous in the sense that it powers all these different industries. Oil powers all these different industries. Data is going to power all those industries as well. If you're in transportation, it's going to make more efficient transportation. If you're in agriculture, it's going to make more efficient agriculture. If you're in government, it's going to make more efficient government. If you're in, you just race across all the things. Yes, hedge funds, insurance, and I can get more concrete. Let me give you a couple of specific examples. I think of the world as, broadly undergoing three transformations today. One is digital transformation. That's the transition of industries to help them digitize, bring their systems into information world such that they can then be more efficient. The second is sustainability, and we've got to transition to have a sustainable economy that doesn't blow up the boundaries of the planet. It obviously does so in a way that we don't further heat the planet and so on. And the third is we've got to do all of that with having good peace and security. Geopolitically. And what we need for all three of those vectors is transparency and accountability of what goes on. So everyone needs to know and understand their supply chains for supply chain risk, for security, for and sustainability. But let me get a little bit more concrete. Digital transformation. Take agriculture. We image every farmer's field on the earth every day. That's roughly a quarter of the landmass of the planet is agricultural land. Every single farmer's field, we can tell in each 3x3 box, what crop is it? Is it corn, wheat, soy? How well is it doing? What practices the farmer used? And what they should do next, whether they should add water, the soil's too dry, we can actually tell the soil moisture level. Is the crop in need of fertilizer, herbicide or not? Are they putting too much so that it's causing runoff that you could then save? In total, we think that we can improve crop yields by at least 20% and decrease use of fertilizer and other things and other inputs by 20% as well. A 40% increase to efficiency of $1 trillion sector, that's a big deal. I could go through industry on digital transformation. Then there's sustainability transformation. Here, we need to help us ourselves to manage the planet. I'll give you an example from just last year. Brazil, we do a weekly image of a scan for new road starts in the Brazilian Amazon, the whole Brazilian Amazon once per week. And if we find a new road, it's a early sign of either illegal deforestation, because they put in these logging roads before they then get a tree, or illegal narcotics, or illegal mining. We provide these weekly alerts to the federal police in Brazil. They go out. They sent last year 3,000 expeditions based on our alerts where they in total reduced deforestation in Brazil by 55% in 1 year on the back of this system, and they confiscated $2 billion worth of assets.
I hope you got a commission on that.
Well, we kind of did, yeah. I mean, that was our sale. It wasn't actually done like that, but I mean, there's great ROI. And so that's sustainability transformation. And then peace and security is where we help countries like what's happening in Ukraine right now. We did a building damage assessment across all of Ukraine, helping everyone to understand what's it going to cost to rebuild. We did an assessment of where the crops and how well the crops are doing for food security for that country and also for the world, because it's a breadbasket for the world. We did an assessment of how the Russians are stealing grain, where they're taking it to. There's all this stuff that we can help operationally and in certain broader humanitarian sense. And finally, also in terms of hearts and minds. Every time Russia says, "Oh, we don't bomb civilian targets," we have shared with the New York Times where they bombed civilian targets that last, the schools and the hospitals. It's accountability that we can share this because it's not a classified system owned by the NRO. We can share that data with news media where it's appropriate to shed light on what's going on and hold those actors accountable. This is transparency equals accountability, and so. These are the three sort of major areas we can help in a couple of specific examples.
I love that. I speak about the fact that people behave differently when they're being watched. Mm-hmm. That, you put a camera in front of the dictator and the dictator changes their behavior. You put drones over poachers going after rhinoceros and the poachers go away. And so this is complete and total transparency and forced accountability. I remember you speaking about a vision of the future of brand new layers of Googleable data or Geminiable or ChatGPTable data where
queryable, I think I said.
What queryable? Yeah, where a school kid can literally can go and discover whatever they want. Can you speak a little bit about that information layer on top of the planet and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. The way I broadly think about it, actually, and you've taken it more into the sort of consciousness realm. I mean, when humans went to the moon and looked back and saw the Earth, we helped up-level human spirit to say, hey, we're on a planet, it's fragile. It made a phase change in human consciousness. The thin layer of atmosphere protecting us from the vacuum of space, the coldness of space. That's, it was daunting, but it helped sort of give birth to the green movement. I think we're on the verge of a different thing. We've got a big mirror to look at ourselves in the face. That webcam it's more of a mirror back to ourselves, right? And with that, it's less about, we're already aware that we're on a planet, that now it's enabling us to take smarter action because everyone can see everything, right? It's so I think of it as awareness to action. That's the phase change that we're going from. And action requires detailed tools and information that's timely and relevant to your day-to-day life. Anyway, going to your journey for a child. Look, think about the exploration that can be done on this planet. Look, I love sci-fi like you do. You're talking about Star Trek. But reality is fucking amazing. Excuse me. Like,
it's all right.
I barely get time for sci-fi because there's so many sci-facts that I just get boggled by, right? The Earth is full of those. You look around, our planet is constantly changing. I look at our imagery every day and you see rivers changing. You see people harvest things. You see boats move. You see all this stuff happening. The Earth is dynamic. We have this false impression the Earth is a static place because we were used to maps, whether it's online or physical. That's not how the world works. The Earth is dynamic. What an exploration. Go pile in.
Everyone, it's Peter. In a few weeks, I'm gathering an incredible group of AI leaders, including Ray Kurzweil, Eric Schmidt, Mustafa Suleyman, Imad Mustaq, Michael Saylor, and others at my private Abundance Summit to discuss the impact of AI on our lives, our businesses, and the world. The Abundance Summit is a private community open to extraordinary moonshot entrepreneurs. It's Singularity University's highest level program, and it's not for everyone. If you're at the top of your game and you want to learn more about this program, click on the link below to be considered. Okay, let's go back to the episode. Enjoy. For everybody listening, Will is an extraordinary moonshot entrepreneur, an exponential entrepreneur, and we met each other in the space community. God, when were the Space Gen conferences? It was
and I mean, I think we met in 1999 in that Vienna conference, and then 2001, 2000, 2001, 2002. I don't know. We definitely met in. I think 1999 was when we met. So 25 years ago.
That's
pretty
good.
Ancient at this time.
I don't know. I still feel like a kid. You're still playing with toys. So, but they're world-changing toys. And I want to dive into the journey, right? I keep on reminding people that, these moonshots that entrepreneurs are taking are not overnight successes. They're typically overnight successes after 10, 11 years of hard work.
Exactly.
And I want to go back to your story. I'd like you to share the story, the ups and the downs, and those pivotal moments. And just to put some numbers on it, Planet was founded circa 2010, I think. And then you went public in 2021. So you can go and find Planet. Planet's on the top of my ticker list on my phone. You can go find Planet on the NASDAQ. And it's now 2024. So it's been a 14-year journey from startup to today. And amazing what you built. But let's go back. So you and I met each other again back on the campus of NASA Ames at Singularity University. And what was that formative moment like for you and your co-founders?
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that had happened was that my colleague at NASA had kept on holding up his phone. This is the early smartphone in 2000.
Was it a Google phone?
I don't know. And in his specific case, I don't know. But he would say, look, this has got most of what a satellite has. If you think about what's in a phone, it's got cameras, it's got GPS, it's got rate gyros, it's got accelerometers, it's got processors, radios. I mean, it's just crazy, all the stuff. Then it's stuffed in here and it costs $500 or $1,000. Meanwhile, NASA is building these huge satellites. They also have roughly the same list of things, but they cost $500 million or $1 billion. And the quick thing, we were like, what are those extra 6 zeros doing for us? And I'm not saying they're nothing. No one was saying it's nothing. It's lower risk. It's a bigger, telescope. It's a better sensor. But it's kind of remarkable how much stuff is fit into this little box. And we wanted to leverage that. NASA was very much in the mindset of inventing everything for itself because you know what? It had to. sending man to the moon. Well, we didn't have computers, so we had to invent microcomputers. We didn't have, solar panels, so we had to invent solar panels. All that. We have to build everything from scratch. Well, guess what? The top R&D dollars aren't at NASA anymore. They're at Google, Samsung, Apple,
yeah.
Microsoft, all the rest. And so this is learning to follow for the space industry, not a comfortable place for the space industry.
For sure.
We're used to leading from the front. We were a little bit annoyed by this whole idea of having to follow. But the fact is that the billions of dollars that have gone into miniaturization of electronics was super useful for space. So this is learning to take those, stuff them into much smaller satellites, much lower cost, but have much higher cost performance. That is data per unit dollar. And, we estimate that has changed orders of magnitude because of ours and others' efforts. I mean, at least 3 orders of magnitude. And that is a bit like the mainframe computer to desktop computer revolution, but for space. And just like the mainframe computer to desktop revolution, it's going to change the whole dynamics of what's possible in space. And this is just the beginning. We're seeing communication satellites and Earth imaging satellites take off, right? But there's going to be others as well. Better GPS and navigation systems. You're going to see, better radar systems. So many things are going to take off because of the fact that you've got much more capability per dollar. Also, launch costs have come down about 4x in the same period. So that has helped as well. Although a common misconception, I think, is that that's the dominant thing that's led to this. Actually, it's kind of the other way around. Satellites miniaturizing has enabled us to put much more capability per kilogram that's going up. And that has changed the demand for going up, which enabled us to bring the cost down. I would say it's much more that way around than the other way around. We still benefit and they add on to one another. But, the 1000x in the space industry, this happened is not to do with the launch. It's to do with the miniaturization and increasing capabilities, performance of satellites.
Per unit dollar, per unit kilogram. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The specific performance of satellites has gone through the roof. That phase change enables lots of different applications, and most of them in the field of some sort of data. Because you're remote, it's all about collecting data or transmitting data. And just in the last 5 years, we've seen more than a 10-fold increase in amount of data from space, and more than a 10-fold increase in the amount of data around orbit, because with communication satellites enabling communication from one side of the planet to the other. That's a total revolution there, 10x in both of those areas. So the upshot of the space revolution is a data revolution.
So, but there was that moment. Was it Robbie who was your co-founder at that time?
Robbie and Chris Boschhausen.
Yeah, and both great, amazing. How old were you guys when you were?
So we were late 20s when we started that, and we were like, okay, so phones, they work. Let's put them in a vacuum. Let's stick them on the side of a rocket.
I remember that conversation. I remember you were saying we should stick this thing in the vacuum chamber and see if it still works afterwards.
Yeah, we did. Ooh, it was funny because, that's like going back to the womb for these guys, because actually all the electronics are made in a vacuum. That's what people don't appreciate. And they're made little like brick shit houses, these things. You can drop them, they still work.
They fall out of airplanes, they land.
Fall out of airplanes, they still work. They're kind of robust. So we stuck it on the side of a rocket. It also still worked. We eventually put 3 into orbit. I almost got fired by Pete Warden because I hadn't really got all the things in a row to do that. I remember that NASA didn't know that we were doing this and kind of freaked out when they found out. But we were like, no, this is going to be cool. We're going to show that consumer electronics can work in space, and that can change the whole cost equation here. So yeah, we launched 3 phones into space. They worked. They were tumbling around.
So I want you to back up a second here. So you have the idea. You and Robbie and Chris was it Planet Labs at the beginning?
Yeah. Well, no. This phone project was at NASA.
This was an internal NASA project.
Internal NASA project.
Government funding just to see. And by the way,
funding.
Stolen work hours, if you would, nights and weekends. And so you send up 3 and it works.
They work.
And then
they're tumbling around, taking pictures. We get people with Yagi antennas all around the world picking up the packets because we don't have ground stations. They send us the packets. We reconfigure these pictures. And we're like, okay, we take pictures from space for a few $1,000s, not a few bazillion dollars. So, okay, this is kind of interesting. maybe we should leave NASA and do something like this. I mean, the cameras on this wasn't the right kind of images. It was more proof of principle. It was a proof of principle that this technology could work in space. So then, we left NASA to start Planet. Actually, it's initially called Cosmogia. That's right. Name a few years in. We launched then.
So where'd you go first? Was Steve your first investor then?
Yeah, so it was. We started building and launching our satellite, first satellite. We put the deposit down on a rocket with our own pocket money.
Which rocket was that?
There was an Antares rocket, and we actually put down two. Okay. One on Antares, one on a Soyuz. Wouldn't be popular these days. We're not meant to use the Russians, but then we could, and we did, and. So we put the deposit down, but there was no way we were going to afford the main cost of the launch. And so we were like, oh shit, we need to get some money. That was when I was reminded, because one of the times we were launching one of these phone sats, it was in the Nevada Black Rock Desert, right where they have Burning Man. And when there's not Burning Man, there's sometimes amateur rocketeers go up there and launch things into space, because there's a very high
airspace,
airspace, so they can do that, and of course there's no one around. So we were up there, and Steve was helping us to put our rocket together or something. I didn't know who he was, but he blogged about what we did the next day, and that was when Pete found out about our phone set project and almost fired me, because he was like, I just read you guys are putting phones in space, and we were like, oh, okay, calm down. It's going to be fine.
For those who don't know, Pete Worden was the head of NASA Ames. He was a general in the Air Force. He was part of the Strategic Defense Initiative back in the 80s under Reagan. A co-conspirator in the entire spaceflight revolution, and a dear friend. He allowed us.
And because I'm a bit of a peace-loving hippie, I prefer peace in space, not SDI in space. I think I won because he was working at NASA. He says he won because I work for him, or something like that. Anyway, Robbie, Chris, and I said at this point, let's spin this out as a company. We took our core spacecraft team. We replaced everyone at NASA first because we wanted to do good by NASA, and we took our core team. Steve kindly, having routed us out, we went to him and said, "Come on, you got to give us some money for this." And he was like, "Okay, you guys are just crazy enough. I've only done one space investment before. It just a year or two earlier invested in SpaceX, first money into SpaceX." And
Steve Jurvetson, one of the most brilliant venture capitalists on the board of SpaceX, had been on the board of Tesla, and has the most magnificent space collectibles collection of Russian and NASA components and hardware and meteorites and everything. Yeah, he's great. How much did you get in the first round? Do you remember?
Oh, that was 3 million C. Then he led also the A, which is another 12 million, I want to say. But that also had some participation from other people. So did the seed. He led the first two, and then the B was led by Yuri Milner, 50 million put in. No, he put in 30 or 50 or something. And then the C round was Data Collective and International Finance Corporation and a bunch of others. And then D round was essentially instigated because we bought the satellite arm of Google. Google then became
slow it down. So during
that time, I go 8 kilometers a second. It's the nature of satellites.
In that window of time, this is 2010 to 2016, 18 timeframe. Both of us were close friends with Larry and Sergey and Eric Schmidt. You were on the campus there of NASA Ames, which is where Google keeps their airplanes and I had Singularity University there. And talk about sort of the first time you connected with the Google guys and start talking about orbiting satellites and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was a little bit random. In 2006 or 7, when I first got to Ames, I like hiking on the weekends, and I hiked from my house where we started Planet and did the first satellite in the garage to the sea, which turns out to be quite a hike, and I haven't really exactly planned it out. With my girlfriend at the time, about an 80-kilometer, 50-mile hike, 2 days from there to the sea. So basically over the mountains to Big Basin and then down to the sea. By the time we got there, there was only one bus a day, and it left. We just missed it. cell phones didn't work there because we're in the middle of nowhere. So we get to this beach and we're like, damn, how exactly are we going to get out of here? And my girlfriend was basically divorcing me at this point. So that's a bit of a bad plan. Anyway, so we're coming down to this beach and I say, well, I hope these guys are friendly because there's 3 people on the beach kite surfing. And one of them turns out to be a friend of mine called Don Montague, who is a wonderful guy and helped to teach Sergey and Larry to kite surf. And it was the other 2 people were Sergey and Larry. And I when they came in off their boards, I was like, oh, hi, Don. Great to see you. Can you give me a lift home? And he was like, no, I'm not going your way, but these guys are. I'm in the car with my girlfriend and Sergey and Larry who are giving me a ride home now. And they're like, can we stop for dinner? I was like, of course, sure. Let's stop for dinner. And we get chatting. And my girlfriend's like, what do you guys do? And they're like, we work at Google. That's how they put it. And I was like, wait a second. Their name's Larry and Sergey, and they work at Google. Okay. I think I know who this is. And she's like, well, what do you do exactly at Google? And they're like, well, set board strategy or something. I'm kicking around to the table going, I think these are the guys that started it. Anyway, became friends with those guys early on, and they got very interested in space and came round to see our lunar lander demo, to see some of the missions that we were, like the one we slammed into the South Pole of the moon looking for water. They came round for it, even though it was landing in the middle of the night. 2 or 3 a.m. and they came, so they're very interested in that stuff. So they followed.
This is where sometimes serendipity and good luck plays a hand.
Yeah, no.
So you start Planet, and Steve invests. And when do you start sniffing around the fact that Google had satellites?
Well, they bought a Terabella or Skybox Imaging, which became Terabella. I want to say in 2015. And so they bought that to start a satellite arm, and they actually were sniffing around us too at the time. And we wanted to stay separate, and they bought this arm, and well, we thought it was fine, and they were going to do that. Of course, it's a little bit competitive.
Now, Skybox at that time was the sub 1 meter resolution image.
Right.
These are larger, much more expensive satellites.
The ones I was saying are the zoom in, because then subsequently Google decided not to continue that investment and spin that out. They came and approached us, and Eric, who was then an investor, had suggested that we have a discussion on that, and we did. And then one thing led to another, and we ended up buying their satellite arm, not for cash. Google has plenty of cash, and we had very little, so it made more sense for us to give stock in exchange for those assets, and then Google became a shareholder.
Hey everyone, I want to take a quick break from this episode to tell you about a health product that I love and that I use every day. In fact, I use it twice a day. It's Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic. Hopefully by now you understand that your microbiome and your gut health are one of the most important modifiable parts of your health. You know, your gut microbiome is connected to everything: your brain health, your cardiac health, your metabolic health. So the question is, what are you doing to optimize your gut? Let me take a moment to tell you about what I'm doing. Every day, I take 2 capsules of Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic. It's a 2-in-1 probiotic and prebiotic formulation that supports digestive health, gut health, skin health, heart health, and more. It contains 24 clinically and scientifically proven probiotic strains that are delivered in a patented capsule that actually protects the contents from your stomach acid and ensures that 100% of it is survivable, reaching your colon. Now, if you want to try Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic for yourself, you can get 25% off your first month's supply by using the code PETER25 at checkout. Just go to seed.com/moonshots and enter the code PETER25 at checkout. That's seed.com/moonshots and use the code PETER25 to get your 25% off the first month of Seed's Daily Symbiotic. Trust me, your gut will thank you. All right, let's go back to the episode.
Do you still call the smaller satellites doves?
Yeah.
I love that. And describe those small satellites.
Yeah, they're about this big. They weigh about 5 or 7 kilograms, so 10 or 15 pounds. They spread their wings out to close to
solar
a meter.
panels.
They're solar panels, exactly. Yeah, and they chirp a little bit from there. Actually, we get data rates of 2 gigabits a second over 1,000-kilometer range from our little radios now.
That's amazing. What altitude are you flying at? I mean,
These are,
people need to know the lower the altitude, the better the resolution, the better comm rate, but the degradation you degrade in orbit. Yeah, so
that's right. Because
what's your trade there?
Yeah, well, our trade is we choose about a 3-year life. Our thinking is that just like you don't want a 3-year-old phone in your pocket, you don't want a 3-year-old satellite in space. It starts to become obsolete. And just the same, actually, really, we've launched on average 4 times. We've launched 35 rockets, over 500 satellites. We launch on average 4 times a year. And every time we're iterating the technology to make it better and better. Just like every time you buy a new phone, it's got the bigger camera, better hard drive, whatever. We're doing the same. And we call that strapping space to Moore's law to make it better and better in that place of data per dollar, which is the sort of the vector we're trying to, the metric we're trying to optimize. So we've seen a 10,000-fold increase from our first satellite to our satellite today in terms of data per dollar.
Wow, and that's incredible. I mean, that is a Moore's law. And are you mostly launching on SpaceX these days, or
SpaceX? We've launched on 35 times on 10 different rocket vehicles. But indeed, SpaceX and the PSLV. I think SpaceX has been our most common one overall.
PSLV is India, right?
Mm-hmm. And we've launched on other vehicles as well: the European Vega, the US Atlas, others.
And when Starship starts, you could launch all 200 at once.
No, we could launch like 10,000 at once. It's crazy. Yeah. No, it's crazy. I mean, I do worry about the A380 problem with that. Like, it's not clear that there's yet a market for that vehicle. It's not impedance matched with people's ability to build satellites yet. The only satellite fleet that can fill it up at the minute is really Starlink itself. But then that doesn't help. They're only their own customer.
Do you feel? Planet used to have the biggest, baddest, most satellites on orbit.
We had the largest satellite fleet, but Elon came over and did more. Yeah, I know. It's kind of annoying. They're bigger satellites, and he's got more of them. I'm pretty outraged by this. No, it's good. Look, we're all obviously trying to do things to help the planet, and I commend what they have done with Starlink. It's and the rockets, of course, the reusability. I was a doubter on that. I thought the reusability was too hard. And he did it.
Well, I mean, you and I have both been for the last 25 years space cadets, and it was always the holy grail of reusability.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
And he pulled it off.
Yeah, and he pulled it off. Yeah, incredible.
You always think of this as Elon. Of course, it's a huge team, but Elon, of course, has been an inspiring leader for them to do that.
This past 3 years, we got Elon to fund $100 million gigaton carbon removal X Prize. To try and stem the tide of the environmental destruction. And you have become an extraordinarily outspoken individual on the environment. And I think part of what you're trying to do with Planet is give us the tools to measure the planet in a way that allows us to hold companies, individuals, dictators, nation states responsible for the impact they're having, because despite the borders that exist, they don't prohibit the free movement of pollutants and CO2. So talk a little bit about that. So if people listening are not convinced or need some persuasion on the state of affairs, give us your best shot.
No, I mean, look, from our 10,000 foot view, or in our case, 400 kilometer view, we see the whole planet, and I see it evolving. The facts are stark, and humans have obviously manipulated the planet. We've got 2 big problems: the one that everyone knows about, and the one that everyone doesn't. The one that everyone knows about is climate, and how we are emitting too much CO2, and it's warming the planet. And obviously, we're having extreme weather events now. That's exactly what the scientists have said. It's the first thing you get is that, and of course, sea level rising, whole nation states being wiped out. The second is biodiversity loss, and this is where we're wiping out ecosystems of life. And you might think, well, why does that matter to humans? I mean, they're just off there, some animals in the jungle. Why does it matter for us? It matters for us because it is estimated that half our economy depends upon what they call nature services, which is the trees and the soils and the mycelium and the plants clean our water and they clean our air and they do all these things. And we don't have the industrial capability to replace that. We don't have the technology. We are fully dependent on the rest of life. And in the last 40 years, in my lifetime, we've wiped out 70% of the life on the earth. 82% of wild mammals gone in 40 years. 75% of fish in freshwater rivers and lakes gone in the last 40 years. 70% of insects gone in the last 40 years. 66% of birds, over half the coral reefs, over half the forests, all gone. And we think
irretrievably gone.
And we think we can do that without there being consequences for us. We are so naive. And what is driving that is deforestation, overfishing. It's human pollutions from agriculture into rivers. It's all these sort of things. And that is just a big problem as climate change. And they couple, of course, to make things worse. Now the Amazon is not any longer a net CO2 sucker because of the climatic events. And then that means it's more likely to fall over as an ecosystem. We are dealing with a complicated system. Humans need to reforest a lot of the land. We need to stop our overfishing. We need to do these things. And there's things individuals can do for this, right? We've got to, reduce our intake of meat, which is what drives 70% of deforestation is for cows. We've got to reduce our, of course, use of fossil fuels and those the things. And there's things we could do to help as well, like helping in our local parks to plant trees, to help rewild local parks. I'm involved with a project that is just rewilding an area about 1,000 hectares north of here in San Francisco to try and bring back the native ecosystems after over usage, both mining and over cattle usage of an area that wiped out most of the natives. But it's hard work. And I wanted to understand what it takes on the ground because we're trying to help people with satellite imagery all over the world to do these conservation efforts. But yeah, no, and the situation is somewhat tragic. What I would say is we have wicked problems and we have wicked tools to go help them. And our aim at Planet is to help provide everyone those tools. Let me give you an example. We are trying to switch to a sustainable economy. For that, we basically have to measure nature and carbon and put it into our economic system. At the end of every year, every company and every country on the planet is going to need to balance its carbon books, just like you balance your finances. And just like doing that, of course, the first step is measuring where the carbon is. Where is it all in your supply chain? You can all do a personal carbon budget. You'll find that flying around is probably the worst bit, as I did. But you need to balance that budget. Well, how do you offset your carbon of your flights or whatever? Well, you can grow trees. You can transition farms to sustainable farming practices. Well, how do you know that's happening when you do that? Well, you need satellite data that can do that. We just launched, just a few weeks ago, it's one of my proudest launches for Planet, proudest moments, is not a rocket launch, but a launch of a data product called Forest Carbon Planetary Variable. We are measuring the carbon across the whole forest of the Earth and helping to quantify how much carbon is in the trees. And we're actually doing it at 3 by 3 meter level every quarter and then going back 10 years. And that means pretty much at each tree, we'll be able to say how much carbon is in the tree. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because if we're going to have carbon markets where Microsoft says, I want to offset my carbon of all my execs flying around, and some people in the Amazon say, well, we'll plant some trees or stop deforestation in my area, somebody needs to act as the bridge that says, indeed, they have done that, and how much carbon has increased, right? You need a carbon economy, and we've been lacking that, but it all depends on this core measurement.
So you make possible actually an X Prize I've wanted to do for a while. I've wanted to do, for lack of a better term, the Trillion Trees X Prize, which is any team can register and can claim a plot of land where they're going to plant trees. They've got to have permission from the landowner, it could be a government location and so forth. And we measure, and hopefully there are thousands of teams in 100 plus countries around the world, and we measure who wins. Now, one wins by getting the most, but there's this massive long tail over the course of a decade. I'm a big fan of your prizes because I think they incentivize innovation as well as much more capital in than the prize givers give. It's kind of amazing what happens. I think you could even do it by carbon. Of course, you have to restrict it by, there was a mistake a little bit in New Zealand where they tried to do this based on carbon, and then everyone planted pine trees, which turned out to be fastest at adding carbon, but they were not native. They hurt a lot of the other species, and then when the wind blew, they all fell down. So you have to do the right kind of trees, but yes, subject to certain caveats. You want to incentivize people to do that. Also, to restore existing forests that people are taking a few trees out, and the idea is to be able to measure that to underpin carbon markets or carbon prizes of the kind you were just saying. Love it. Will, we have a lot of moonshot entrepreneurs, people who've got big ideas, what I dare call exponential entrepreneurs. Can you mind sharing some of your lessons learned? Like, some of the challenges or problems, or what was it that led you to this extraordinary success of building this, and now as a public company CEO and a company, frankly, that has 100x growth potential as you measure the world. It's huge. It's a data company. It's an AI company that uses satellite technology. But the journey could not have been easy. What were some of the lessons learned? What's the advice you have for entrepreneurs out there?
Well, look, I think the biggest thing is that it takes time, grit, and endurance. A lot of people will list all the things that differentiate good startups and bad startups, the right idea, the right timing, all these things. I'd say by far the biggest one is endurance. As you put it to me once, and it's one of the sagest pieces of advice I ever received, and it was to do with your project on the first X Prize, the Ansari X Prize. You said for 8 years, no one noticed what you were doing, basically. No one had even figured it out. Maybe, I remember you showing me a little clip from the LA Times that was like this big on page 40. How proud you were that somebody had, it was something like that. And I was like, wow, Peter's great. And then 2 years later, it was front page of every headline on the planet.
Yeah.
And the exponentials are hard to understand, and they, humans don't have good intuition for it, as you've explained many times. And so towards the end, you get a big effect that so you could do, as the Silicon Valley adage goes, you always underestimate what you can do in a year. Overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in 10. It takes 10. No, the sage piece of advice, I should say, is the thing you said. Because of that experience, it takes 10 years to do anything meaningful in the world. 10 years.
Yeah, you had 11 years from coming up with the idea until the company went public.
Right.
X Prize was 11 years for me too.
Yeah, it's 10, 12 years. Yeah. If you're tackling a problem that's actually going to have serious impact on the world, not just a frivolous thing, and it's not going to happen in a year. It's going to happen in 10. So, wow, that's just a reality, I think. And there's huge rewards for it, but you have to stick with it. And the number of people that told me no was, I can't even count, right? I mean, no, you can't do it. No, you can't have money. No, there's no business. No, you can't build those satellites. Blah, 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 blah. So, and I had to keep going, and our team had to weather through that, right? And that's, it takes a certain sense of endurance as well as idea and timing and all the rest of it, which obviously you need too. But, and luck, a whole heap of luck, right? I mean, I mentioned the Sergey and Larry thing. I mean, what the heck? Right place at the right time. Like, so some of that just...
But one would say luck comes from perseverance as well. Like you stick around long enough.
Totally.
Yeah.
And to take risks, right? So yeah, nothing ventured, nothing gained and all that. So I definitely would say you got to stick with it. The other thing I would say is tackle something that's meaningful in the world. Life's too short. Don't ever start the strategy that looks like this. I will do this thing, which doesn't sound that interesting. Cool tech, but really the main thing is I'll get rich and then I'll be a philanthropist and give the money away. Such bullshit.
I agree. It's ridiculous.
It's that vote with your feet, do something useful every day. Don't wait a few years until you're rich enough to then do cool stuff. Do cool stuff with your feet. I gave a talk at Stanford. So I have a basic test for that. If you should be able to, whatever your idea is, you should be able to look at the UN development goals, sustainable development goals, and check a few that goal, that project helps. And if you can't, if the answer is a null set, you should be looking seriously at that idea, And let me be honest, like there's a lot of apps in Silicon Valley that maybe $1 billion companies.
No more photo sharing apps, please.
Yeah, exactly. What the heck? That may make money.
Yeah.
And it is perfectly waste of time. And I used to think of this as like, okay, well, that's cool. Different people do different things and that's helpful. Except when you think about all the challenges of the planet, we can't waste loads of the best engineers. This is what gives me pain about a Facebook right now. And I don't mean to pick them out, but like, I don't see, it's not clear it's net positive to the world. And again, you could say, well, it doesn't matter. Cool stuff, cool tech. I'm sure some interesting tech will come out of it. There's definitely good, but there's definitely bad in terms of ruining our information ecology with echo chambers and stuff. But I think it's much worse than that. You are putting 40,000 or whatever it is engineers who aren't solving the world's problems. They're just helping us to share pictures. What the fuck? I mean, there's people starving on the planet. I'm sorry, just not where we need to be putting our time and resources when we have, a 500 million people that are undernourished, a climate change challenge, a biodiversity loss, all the problems that we have in the world. So life's too short. If it doesn't hit one of the big goals for the planet, don't do it.
Yeah, the way I put it is if you want to become a billionaire, help 1 billion people. And the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Everybody, I want to take a short break from our episode to talk about a company that's very important to me and could actually save your life or the life of someone that you love. The company is called Fountain Life. And it's a company I started years ago with Tony Robbins and a group of very talented physicians. Most of us don't actually know what's going on inside our body. We're all optimists. Until that day when you have a pain in your side, you go to the physician in the emergency room and they say, listen, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have this stage 3 or 4 going on. And, it didn't start that morning. It probably was a problem that's been going on for some time. But because we never look, we don't find out. So what we built at Fountain Life was the world's most advanced diagnostic centers. We have 4 across the US today, and we're building 20 around the world. These centers give you a full body MRI, a brain vasculature, an AI-enabled coronary CT looking for soft plaque, a DEXA scan, a GRAIL blood cancer test, a full executive blood workup. It's the most advanced workup you'll ever receive. 150 gigabytes of data that then go to our AIs and our physicians to find any disease at the very beginning when it's solvable. You're going to find out eventually. Might as well find out when you can take action. Fountain Life also has an entire side of therapeutics. We look around the world for the most advanced therapeutics that can add 10, 20 healthy years to your life, and we provide them to you. at our centers. So if this is of interest to you, please go and check it out. Go to fountainlife.com/Peter. When Tony and I wrote our New York Times bestseller, Life Force, we had 30,000 people who reached out to us for Fountain Life memberships. If you go to fountainlife.com/Peter, we'll put you to the top of the list. Really, it's something that is, for me, one of the most important things I offer my entire family, the CEOs of my companies, my friends. It's a chance to really add decades onto our healthy lifespans. Go to fountainlife.com/Peter. It's one of the most important things I can offer to you as one of my listeners. All right, let's go back to our episode.
I'll close out with something else. We just landed on the moon, which is fun. First commercial, private commercial vehicle to make it. And you and I have been Lunites for quite some time. You were involved with Pete Warden on a few, shall we say, undercover, unusual lunar missions.
Area 51 lunar mission, yeah.
Yeah, to crash into the South Pole and image the lunar poles, looking for ice in permanently shadowed areas, because ice is the Saudi oil fields of the moon, liquid oxygen and hydrogen. I just announced on a podcast, I went back with Bill Gross from Idea Lab, and we talked about the blast-off lunar mission we had worked on for a number of years. And of course, Google Lunar X Prize that you were familiar of. We had 26 teams, 3 made attempts, and Intuitive was the 4th team that made an attempt, and they pulled it off.
They stuck the landing. Was the hard bit.
Yeah. Amazing. Makes you proud. Now, it wasn't quite, the lunar rover in 1972 bouncing around with humans, but just like your phone sat has evolved, the evolution of what we'll see, especially as Starship gets to the moon, is going to be awesome. Are you still a Lunite over a Mars guy?
Oh God, yeah. It's not only, it's like a 1,000 times easier to put a settlement on the moon than Mars. Look, I think we've mainly got to pay attention to this planet, but the moon is inspiring to me. I think that it's a place where I would love to visit there and look back at how big the Earth is in the sky, 4 times wider than the moon is in our sky, and see the continents and get that perspective. That I think that helps people to understand our place. But practically and technically, it is just far easier than Mars, because Mars has the annoying thing of an atmosphere, which for spacefaring species is really annoying. Right? It's only useful if you can actually breathe it, which you can't on Mars. If you can't breathe it, then it just makes landing and taking off much harder. You still have to wear a spacesuit, but you can't land and take off. And the moon is 1.5 or 2 days or 3 days travel time, whereas Mars is 8 months, and you can go any day of the week, which makes a big difference.
2.4 second round trip by the speed of light. You can have a conversation.
Exactly, you can have a conversation, whereas you can't on Mars. Just the difficulty delta is orders of magnitude. I think, we did this estimate at this workshop when we were at Ames, where we estimated, even with with Falcon 9, forget Starship, and by the way, Falcon 9 is perfectly adequate for this. You could put a settlement on the moon that we think would be self-sustaining, being able to do its core things of being able to mend everything that would break, that would be life system critical, for a couple of $1 billion. What the heck? That seems like a reasonable. Why wouldn't we do that?
It's something an individual can do, right?
Yeah,
Elon or Bezos.
Yeah, some of our friends could do that, and they wouldn't even notice it disappear from their bank account.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, again, most of our energy's got to be on terra firma. We've got so many challenges, but it's inspiring, and I think it makes sense at that sort of scale to have backup plans for humanity. So yeah. Yep. Yep. this infrastructure. Exactly. Yeah, if I could just riff off that, thank you for it's it's a tool, that enable, but it's an ecosystem for sure. There's no way we can do all the applications as one company that to help use this data to help make smarter decisions or help make lives better around the planet. There's just a billion companies that could be built off the top of this an application. So AI makes it easier as well. So you don't have to have, again, a PhD in satellite imagery processing to get to grips with this. This is a standard API. You say your AOI, your area of interest, your time of interest, your TOI, and then we'll just give you the data. Or even we'll give you analytics feeds, like how much carbon is in all the trees, or where are all the ships, or whatever, and we'll just give you lat longs and these things. This is getting easier and easier. And so I think we're successful not only we can enable that, we're only successful as Planet if we help companies to do that as an ecosystem. This is like the iPhone App Store, but for building solutions to help the planet.
I was going to say that. Yep.
I want thousands of ecopreneurs, as Mark Benioff likes to say, of entrepreneurs that are focused on helping the planet, building off of the top of Planet's data. Let me say one other thing. Look, we do have as I said, we've got wicked problems, wicked technologies to help solve them. I'm going to disagree with your abundance thing a little bit here. We have some of those problems are so acute that I think that we're going to need technology solutions like renewable energy and better data solutions. And we're going to have to consume less material resources, because there's no that you can get more digital resources, but you can't consume more than we're presently consuming. It's eating the planet. That's what we're seeing. The mining, even if you swap the renewable energy, for example, we're seeing all the mining for lithium for more batteries. In the end, we also just need to eat a little less, waste less. We waste 45% of our food. We need to conserve a little bit more on electricity and things. That combination is what we're going to need to get out of here. It's a smart use of our present stuff, smart technologies like renewable energy, and smart use of our present stuff, including a personal behavioral level. We're going to have to change our behavior a little bit.
I respect the reduction in waste, and I respect the increase in efficiency. And I think for the first time ever, we've got the tools to begin to think through that and to do that. So listen, if you're a moonshot entrepreneur and you're trying to figure out your next gig, what would you do with an incredible information layer on top of the earth that is getting deeper and richer and accessible through APIs and AI engines? I can start imagining a whole slew of different startups I'd be doing. So maybe it's a little bit of inspiration. Again, thank you to you, Will, to Robbie, to Chris for founding Planet. A real pleasure to have you as a friend, and so proud of what you built.
Thanks a lot, Peter. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you today.